Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Posted Up with Chris Haynes podcast here on Yahoo Sports. We just concluded the NBA season. Thank God that is out the way. It's been a long year, and as you know, the NBA never stops. There's never really an off season as we transition to the NBA draft. And with us on this episode, making her first appearance, I believe, on this podcast. This is you have to know her. Listen, if you follow college basketball, even if you follow high school hoops, she specializes in knowing and recognizing some of the top prospects that have ended up becoming NBA stars way before you even know who they were. She has relationships with these young men, far beyond them even hearing their name called in the NBA draft. This is Yahoo Sports. College basketball, high school preps extraordinaire, Krysten Peek. KP, first of all, thank you for coming on. Second of all, the question I want to ask KP is, how much time do you invest all throughout the year getting to know these prospects? And you just have such a vast understanding, and I'm going to promote the mock draft that you posted, I believe it was today. But KP, tell me about how you operate in doing your job so effectively.
I mean, first of all, I don't have a life outside of basketball. I don't have a husband. I don't have children. I have a dog. I have a puppy, Gary. He's about anything outside of basketball. But like you said, basketball doesn't stop. And especially with the NBA and what I do and cover the draft, after Summer League, then it's Peach Jam, then it's Fab 48 in Las Vegas, then it's USA basketball training camp. It's a year-long process. And it's not only that, it's like I start covering these players when they're freshmen and sophomores. So you can see that growth and development because, some NBA guys, they only see the freshman year and that's the sample size is like this. I want to make sure when I'm evaluating these players, I see more of a sample size like this. So it's more of a 5-6 year time span instead of just one college season for most of these players that are projected at the top.
And as I mentioned before, KP has her latest mock draft up, and this is the final one until the draft. Is that correct?
Well, I just talked to Joanna, our editor, and I was just like, I might have to be making some adjustments because there are some crazy things being said out there already on Monday. This is what draft week is all about. I just talked to Jay Nivey, and he told everybody at media availability, he's sitting at 4. He's slotted at 4, has not had any interaction with the Sacramento Kings, who have the number 4 pick, did not work out with them. The only teams he worked out for were the Orlando Magic, who have the number 1 pick, Oklahoma City Thunder, number 2 pick. There's been a lot of rumblings that he could possibly surprise a lot of people and go number 2, or Sam Presti with his 8,000 draft picks and future draft picks might make a play for him at 5. And then the other team that he worked out for was the Detroit Pistons. So kind of in that range, just getting a feel for where these guys are at this process is crazy. And it's draft week. It's like Christmas Eve and graduation all rolled into one week. And I am here for it.
And Jay Nivey, he had a pretty interesting remark about Sacramento. He said, he mentioned that he didn't work out for them at all, haven't had any contact with them. But he said if they were to select them, I guess it wouldn't be the worst option in the world. So it doesn't sound like he's too keen in on joining the Kings if that were to be the case. What did you gather from that remark?
I gather, he doesn't want to go to Sacramento. It's kind of obvious. And I don't blame them because they already have. They drafted Davion Mitchell last year. The year before that, they got Tyrese Halliburton, and then they trade him to the Indiana Pacers. And the Sacramento Kings have had a lottery pick every single year except for 1 year since 2007. And what have they done with it? Yeah. You take Marvin Bagley with the number 2 pick, leaving Luka Doncic and Trae Young on the table. It always just seems like they overthink it and they make the wrong pick. And I think they're going to do the same thing. I think they're probably going to take Keegan Murray or entertain trade talks for Jay Nivey. And then 2-3 years from now, Jay Nivey is going to be turned into John Morant 2.0. And we're all going to feel like the Kings passed up on him.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about Keegan Murray. I interviewed him yesterday. That story is on Yahoo Sports as right now. But let's go to the top 2 picks. Obviously, when the Orlando Magic won the number 1 pick, most people thought at initially. Holmgren out of Gonzaga. That was a talk initially. And then as the days started passing by, the weeks started passing by, we started hitting some fluctuation right there. So as of right now, who do you have at the number 1 slot? And why?
I have Jabari Smith out of Auburn. And like you said, like the stars were kind of aligning there for Chet Holmgren to be reunited with his AAU and high school teammate, Jalen Suggs. The two of them have logged countless games together since 6th grade, coming up in the Minnesota team, playing for Minnehaha High School and Team Sizzle on the Under Armour circuit together. So you kind of saw those stars aligning, and they both really want to play together. But the problem is the Thunder need some help from the 3-point shooting range. Like, they shot 33% as the team last year. And when you got a guy on the board like Jabari Smith, who has great size that can help out Wendell Carter Jr. in the front court at 6'10", has more of a built out frame than Chet Holmgren, and shot 42% from deep, led the SEC in 3-point field goal percentage at 6'10", you cannot pass up on him when that clearly is a need for you and a hole that he can come in and fill right away.
So what happened with, would you say Chet stock? I mean, it's crazy to say drop. I mean, just go to number 2, but what happened from the lottery day to now as it pertains to Chet?
Honestly, I don't think anything happened. I think it's all been preference, or just preference for inside the organization and what they really want moving forward. I mean, Chet is the swing for the fences type of prospect. We've never seen anyone like him. Can he be that shooter in the pick and pop situation? Yes, we saw him over the course of the year. His 1 year at Gonzaga, he was stepping in more fluidly to transition threes and knocking them down confidently. And so that is an area where I think he can grow and kind of showcase that sort of skill set. And I just think it's a small frame, like his slight frame, you know, someone that's 7'1", 195 pounds. I saw him at the draft lottery and he looked taller. So it looked like he grew 1 or 2 inches. I'm sitting down with him tomorrow and I'll be able to gauge a little bit more of that. But yeah, it's a slight frame that kind of give people pause. But Evan Mobley was great this year and everybody thought he was too skinny, and he ended up in the Rookie of the Year conversation playing for Cleveland. So nothing's changed. I think it's just a preference at the end of the day.
Now, like you said, you saw a lot of these players for 4 or 5, even 6 years before even getting to this point. So I want to pick your brain on just how would you evaluate a player's ceiling? Talk about Chet right now. Like what is his ceiling? What do you think he can materialize into in the NBA?
For Chet, it's so funny because we've seen him be successful at every single level against all the odds. I mean, I've probably asked him several times, what do you say to the critics that say you're too skinny, you can't bang down low, your game doesn't translate to the next level? And he's very honest. He said, I would tell those people that you've never seen me play an entire full game of basketball and you've just watched highlights on the internet and you don't know how much work I put into this. You're not looking at my footwork around the rim and the way I move my hips and try to position myself to my advantage. You know, and I've had NBA scouts, they've told me, because I've asked them, I said, who does Chet guard at the next level? And they counter to me, forget about who he guards. Who guards him? Who? Joel Embiid, like Chet is taking him off the dribble every single time, you know, because he's got the footwork to do that, and the size and the length with his 7'5" wingspan to scoop shots over the top of defenses.
Okay. All right. So we're talking, but definitely a potential, all-star from year to year.
Yes.
Definitely. All right. So another player I want to talk about, KP, is a player who is probably, you could probably call him the most mysterious player we have in the draft, especially in the lottery. I think I say that. What name comes to mind to you right now?
Shaedon Sharpe.
There you go. Tell us about him. A lot of people don't know about his skill set, but the top high school prospect in his class. But tell me about like the path he took to get to this point, and why is there so much intrigue with him?
I'll tell you, I mean, Shaedon, he's originally from Canada. He played prep school at Dream City Christian outside of Arizona. And during the pandemic, everything was shut down in California, in Nevada. There were only tournaments going on in Utah, of all places, where I actually have a house, and Arizona. So I want to say I've probably seen Shaedon Sharpe in person more than anybody out there evaluating him, because during the pandemic, like, they came to Salt Lake City. I was going back and forth to Chandler, Arizona for tournaments. And it was one of those things where he was like a top 80, top 100 player. I saw him for the first time and I said, I think you're a top 10 player in this class. And he didn't necessarily believe it. So to kind of see him accept that role, and he might have risen too fast because he's a very soft-spoken player, very, very quiet kid. It kind of shows on the court. Like, he doesn't assert himself with confidence, but his skill set is undeniable. Jumping out of the gym. There was a rumor that came out, and I asked Shaedon if this was true, that he didn't do any of the measurements at the combine, which I thought he should have at least done the vertical jump, because he can jump out of the gym. And a team tested him and they said he had a 49-inch vertical. Dang. Which would have been the highest recorded vert jump in NBA draft combine history. But he didn't get tested. And when I asked him, he was like, yeah, I mean, I get, like, he's so just humble and very quiet. But a lot of teams have reservations on the fact that he didn't play a single minute at Kentucky. And they want to know if his motor is there and if he's going to be able to contribute 82 games a year. But Chris, I'm telling you, if Shaedon Sharpe hits, if he hits and he's as good as I think he can be, he's a better shooting Anthony Edwards.
Wow. Okay. Now that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. Now, KP, I want to ask, so as of right now, your mock draft, you have him at number 6 to the Indiana Pacers. Now, for all of what you said, and you've evaluated him as more than anybody out there, would executives view that as a risk? Like, how high is it being considered a risk in taking Shaedon Sharpe?
Of course it's a risk. I think anywhere you take them, 5 to 8 to 9 is a risk. But here's the problem, or here's the thing. None of it matters, because even if they take the risk on Shaedon and he's still a year behind, and it's a team like the Detroit Pistons, Indiana Pacers, even Portland Trailblazers, none of it matters, because all those teams in that range are going to try to tank for Victor Wembanyama next year, the French phenom, 7'3". He went head to head with Chet Holmgren last year and made Chet look like he was on the freshman team, while Victor, a year younger, was dominating. He had 8 blocks in the FIBA World Cup, when France played Team USA. I mean, regardless if Shaedon Sharpe doesn't land or not, it doesn't matter, because next year's draft is so special, and you're going to see teams around December start to tank for this generational type talent.
Now, Shaedon Sharpe, he worked out for the Portland Trailblazers, and then I believe he was supposed to work out for the Pelicans in the days ahead, and that workout was canceled. So
you read between the lines there.
Exactly. So there's people that believe that he might have got a promise at this point. So he's definitely somebody who has, I guess, showcased his skill set in these workouts leading up, and he's putting himself in good shape. So we talked about him a little bit. Keegan Murray out of Iowa, had the opportunity to interview him, and I would just say this, some of the intel I got, he ended up meeting, I think he worked out with 4 teams. Can't remember off the top of my head what 4 teams those were, but he also met with the Sacramento Kings, who have the, 4th pick. And the Kings even arranged for him to have dinner with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. So they're really high on the kid. You have Keegan at 5 to the Detroit. Is that Detroit?
Yes,
that is Detroit. Yep. At Detroit. Tell me about Keegan, because is he somebody you watch? Because this guy didn't really have a scholarship offer out of high school, went to a prep school after that, and then just kind of like blossomed and shot up from 6 foot to 6'8" from sophomore year to senior year. Tell me about him.
Yeah, Keegan is, I will be the first to say it. I did not see him as a high school prospect because he wasn't that, top 100 player. But I love stories like this. I love late bloomers like Keegan Murray. I think Johnny Davis, also out of Wisconsin, had a similar thing. And those 2 players, Johnny Davis and Keegan Murray, nobody improved their game from their freshman to sophomore year more than Keegan Murray and Johnny Davis. I mean, Keegan ended the season leading the Big Ten in scoring. He broke a new tournament record in points scored in the Big Ten tournament. And the Big Ten is a really good conference. That's hard to do. It's hard to lead the conference in scoring. Jaden Ivey is in the same conference. I mean, you're battling every single night. And he put up 20, 25 points consistently all season long. So I know that a lot of teams like him because he's reliable and they know what they're getting out of him. And one thing that you have to remember, Chris, is there are only going to be probably 3 or 4 stars in this entire draft out of 58 picks, right? So if you're at 4 and you just want that missing piece to play alongside De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell, then yes, you take Keegan Murray because you know exactly what you're getting. He's going to be a great complementary piece to those two in the backcourt. And he's a safe pick. He's a safe pick.
Do you see him falling outside the top 5? I know, because
No.
reason I asked that, you say no. The reason I asked that, he's going to be 22 when the NBA season starts. And I think over the last couple of years, we've actually seen 22-year-old players go into the first round. Desmond Bane is one of them. There's been a few other, I can't think of them. But
Cam Johnson.
That's right, Cam Johnson. That's right. So is age a factor at all for him?
I don't think age is a factor in Keegan Murray's case because yes, he's going to be 22 at the start of the NBA season, but he's also got a lot more just experience under his belt, so he'll be able to contribute right away. I think he'll be able to adjust to the pace of the game a little easier than someone like Jalen Duren, who just turned 19 and reclassified and is a little bit on the younger side. So he's not so much of a project. And we saw the same thing with Chris Duarte last year, who I think was 23 or 24 with a child starting his NBA career. And he was an instant impact guy for the Indiana Pacers.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point right there. And it's good. And I'm glad to see that we're kind of moving away from labeling if a player is like 21, 22 and they come in and saying that they don't have much upside. Because the case with Keegan, this is a guy who grew from 6 foot to 6'8" within 2 years. And so he told me like he's getting used to like being 6'8" still. And so there's still a lot of room for him to grow just being that stature right now. And so that's we'll see where he lands.
Honestly, Chris, I think it's more of, when you think of age, it's like, okay, has there been growth to their game from this year to this year to this year? If they stop growing and they plateau, then that's an area for concern. But in Keegan's case, he shot up from, last year to this year. So I think that gives NBA teams encouragement, that he's going to continue to grow, not only into his 6'8" frame, but also his game.
KP, now I step away from college a little bit. Tell me about the prospects coming out from the G League Ignite. So just go ahead and mention the players and tell me about their prospects leading into this draft.
So Dyson Daniels, an Australian guard who elected to play for the G League Ignite over a couple college options. I just spoke to him last week. He is someone that a lot of teams really like because he too grew. He went from 6'6" to 6'8" over the course of the G League season, and is someone that, showed improvement every step of the way this past season in terms of like his reads off the pick and roll, off the catch and shoot threes. Like he got more comfortable with everything, playing against grown men, coming from Australia, playing against grown men. And so seeing that like he's got versatility with his size and he can play on and off the ball as a secondary ball handler. He's someone that kind of shot up draft boards. Now we're looking at him in the 5 to 8 range, 5 to 9 range. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we got Jaden Hardy, who I know you've interviewed and got to know. He was, the number 1 scorer coming out of high school, has that James Harden step back 3 that was automatic. Didn't really see a lot of that in the G League because, the players are grown professionals. They're grown men. So creating that separation, he had to adjust to that. And we didn't see the success of that shot like we did in high school. And he didn't take players off the dribble like he used to as this guy's first step is so great. And he just was settling for outside threes. And so we're seeing him fall to the late 20s. And he's someone that I'm really going to be curious to watch his NBA career. Cause I think 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, wow, Jaden Hardy was drafted where? Like similar to what we say with Tyrese Maxey. We're like, I cannot believe he fell to 21. And then after that, we got Mike Foster, I think he's a 2nd round sleeper. Mm-hmm. He really, really honed in on his body, lost 14 pounds, put some muscle mass on, and is trying to prove that he's more than just a rim running center. or rim running forward. And he played really well in the draft combine. I think he helped himself.
Now you have Daniels as of right now in your mock draft going 8 to New Orleans. And let me see. Let me look up Hardy real quick.
I think Hardy is 20 going to Miami in 20, what is that? 25, 26?
That is 27. You have him,
Okay.
Jaden Hardy, 27. And so I want to ask you this. So now with the G League Ignite being established for the last couple of years, what do you think of the program of having guys opt out of college and go that route? How is it fair? What is the talk when you talk to some of the top prospects on having that option now?
They love the option. And along with that, you've got Overtime Elite in Atlanta that just finished their inaugural season. And then the NBL over in Australia, obviously we've seen players have success over there with LaMelo Ball, RJ Hampton. So I think they like having options, and the G League path isn't for everyone. I mean, it's more so for like the guards that don't have a problem creating for themselves and want to be, just challenged at the pro level. Whereas I honestly think that if both Mike Foster and Jaden Hardy would have gone to school, we wouldn't even be talking about them like this. I think we'd see Jaden more in the late lottery range, and then also Mike Foster probably early second round, because you're showcasing what you can do against your peers, not against men that are trying to keep food on their table and make that NBA roster. So, and then again, like they were playing alongside Scoot Henderson, who was 17, and he's this phenom point guard who's probably going to be the second pick in next year's draft. And Scoot was making them not necessarily look bad, but he was so good that NBA teams are like, okay, well, we love him. And if he's this much better than Jaden Hardy, where does he compare in this year's draft?
Yeah, that's a good point. And like you said, Jaden possibly can be, once we look back in this draft years later, say, man, how did he fall down to, potentially 27, where you have him on the mock draft? So we're going to look out for that. So KP, tell me about what player has the most wiggle room is probably not the word, but this guy can possibly go as high as something or as low as, who has that big of a range where you just really don't know where he's going? What was the most difficult player for you in creating this draft, this mock draft?
I would say, someone that we didn't expect to be in this draft this year. We thought he would test the waters and then elect to go back to Arizona for his junior year. But it's Dalen Terry, 6'7" guard, has so much upside. Didn't participate in any of the scrimmages at the combine, which teams were really disappointed in, but has worked out well for teams. I've heard his draft range is anywhere from 14 or 15 to the Cavs or to New Orleans, or 32 to the Toronto Raptors. So he's got a huge range. And, like as soon as he elected to stay in the draft, you have like executives texting me on a Friday night, like, oh, I'm stuck watching every Dalen Terry game from the past season to try to get an idea of who he's going to be, how he could fit in our roster, and who he can be at the next level.
All right. So on the flip side, KP, I have to ask you, when do you start doing your mock drafts?
My first one comes out the day after the previous draft.
All right. Okay. Wow, the day after the previous draft. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
2023 mock will be on Friday.
Okay, KP, I have to ask you this. What player has dipped dramatically since that first mock draft you did for this 2023 class? Like what player is like, I don't know, falling out of your lottery or falling out of your first? Like what player is that, and then why?
I want to say probably the biggest faller was Jaden Hardy. Like I had him in the top 5 in my initial mock draft because I was projecting him as a high school prospect, and what I saw him do at the high school level, like he was unstoppable. He was the best. He was the top scorer in America. So he's someone I think that is really kind of surprised me. Ty Washington, the Kentucky guard, he played off the ball at Kentucky, playing next to Severe Wheeler, who's a true point guard. And I thought it was good for him because it showed NBA scouts like, no, I prefer to have the ball in my hands, but I'm going to work on development off the ball this year. But he's kind of falling a little bit too. So those are two players that I'm surprised that they're falling to the end of the first round. But again, like 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're going to look back and, anytime you draft a Kentucky guard, we should all know this by now. Like, it's a product of Coach Cal. Like,
Yeah,
we've been fooled with Emmanuel Quickly and Tyrese and even, Devin Booker, who came off the bench. Like, we should all know by now that, like, when you're drafting a Kentucky guard, you know what you're getting.
All right. So, KP, let me ask you this. This might be my last question or the last few questions, but when you think about this NBA draft, you talked about this draft might have 3 or 4 stars in it. When you think about this draft, when we're talking about it 5, 10 years down the road, what will most people say about this? Some people say, draft is star heavy, good role players, or it's a lot of bust in that draft. How will we categorize this draft 5, 10 years down the road?
I think what we're going to see 5, 10 years down the road is we're going to be able to pinpoint that this was the draft that started the new way the center position is played with Jabari Smith, with Chet Holmgren, and with Paolo Banchero. And not only that, I mean, I guess you could say that Evan Mobley started it really last year. But this, with these top 3 at this draft, this is going to be like the shift for the way that position is played in the NBA. And then, of course, with Victor Wembanyama coming next year at 7'3", like, it's just going to continue like that. We're going to stop criticizing these players for being tall and skinny and more focus on what they bring to the game of basketball and their skill set past maybe their slight frame.
Okay. Now, KP, this is my last question. What are you doing leading up to this draft? These next 3 days, 3-day window, what is your schedule like? What are you up to?
This is the calm before the storm. This Monday that we're shooting this podcast, after this, it's on the phone constantly with teams, trying to chase down what other team is targeting what player, fishing down rumors. Like, I heard today that the Detroit Pistons went down to see Jalen Duren work out last minute. So it's like, oh, Jalen Duren at number 5, is that actually a real possibility? So, and then of course, draft night, it's graduation. I get to sit down with these players, and it's funny because I'll be sitting there. I'll be like, I remember seeing you for the first time, mouth full of braces. like
That's dope.
It's a very full circle moment for me. And I love it. It's my favorite night of the year.
No, that's dope. That's dope. Like you said, you've been there from the beginning and now get to see these kids reach their dreams, and you're right there as well. And I know it's good to see a familiar face too.
Oh, yes.
When you're interviewing them after they got their hat in their team and they get to see you. And so that's a cool moment. So I'm always like, that warms me, just seeing the interaction you have with them and the relationship you've established with them. So it's a cool feeling. So KP, do your thing, man. I appreciate you coming on, giving such great insight. You do a phenomenal job for us here at Yahoo Sports. The high school poops, college. I can say, like, I'm on the road all the time in gyms, but it does not compare to what you do and the amount of games you go to. You go to multiple games in a day. I can't say that.
I remember, Chris, when you said, you're like, I did my first back-to-back doubleheader NBA game, and I thought, how can KP sit in a gym from 8 in to 10 at night and watch really bad AAU basketball?
Oh, yeah. So no comparison. So you're a pro. You're a stud. So KP, thank you. This was Krysten Peek on the Yahoo Sports podcast here, posted up with Chris Haynes. I appreciate you, KP. And hey, follow her work. Shout out your Twitter handle, KP.
At Krysten Peek, Krysten with a Y.
Follow her. You want to get the insight, intel from her leading up to the draft this Thursday. I'm actually flying to New York to cover the draft myself. I'm going there tomorrow, so we'll have more coverage for you. So everybody, thank you for watching this episode and listening to this episode of the Posted Up with Chris Haynes podcast here on Yahoo Sports. Have a great draft day for you guys who have teams. Have a great draft day. Most of the time, for most people, most fans, they don't have great draft days. So good luck. Take care, everybody. Peace out.